when I was 19. When I was 19, I worked in Jersey. There's people think of Jersey and they think of like Newark or what is it? The Sopranos, that kind of stuff. But there's actually a lot of forestry in New Jersey. The Appalachian Trail runs through there. There's High Point State Park, and there's a lot of really nice wilderness there. And my very first job working in the wilderness was at a camp for teenagers who had been placed there by judges or behavioral counselors, and it was a fantastic experience. I loved it. But what it was is there was a base camp, and then each group of about 8 to 10 kids and 2 leaders had their own camps. There were, a mile or 2 from base camp. And then there was tons more property all around, a big ass lake, and several campsites for the groups to occasionally leave their own satellite camps and go what they called vagabonding. And, you would hike for a few miles and find a little small undeveloped campsite there on the property and spend a night or 2 there. There was grand vagabonds, which were like week-long trips on the AT or various wilderness areas outside of the property, but the regular ones were pretty common. You do a couple a week maybe. And this one time we went to one of the little satellite campsites, the small ones that aren't developed, called Fisherman's Cabin. We had goofy names for all of them. And just after we set up camp, the kids wanted to go down to the lake and just mess around. They had the delusion that they were going to catch fish for dinner. And, let them try. But at one point, I'm in the back. When you've got 2 leaders, you have one in the very back, one in the very front. This way, you can keep the kids kind of corralled between you. It's like trying to herd cats, but there's got to be a science to it to make it work at least a little bit, right? So we kind of ideally had them under control. And the guy in front, we'll just call him Jimmy for the sake of anonymity, he walked the group right through a swarm of wasps. I don't know how he never got stung, but he didn't. And as I'm hiking, I hear kids starting to scream, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Why are these guys screaming? And then I start to see them swatting and running in circles and freaking out. Eventually they get through the swarm. I see the swarm. Luckily, I didn't have to go through it at first because I noticed what was going on being in the back. But one kid froze. He was so petrified of being stung that he could not move, couldn't run, and just stood there, sadly, getting stung over and over. So I had to go into the swarm, grab him, and basically drag him out. And I got stung about a dozen times. At this time, I was shaving my head every day with a razor. It was a lot easier than trying to keep it buzzed. Sorry, I'm kind of turning back around because there's people. But my head was totally bald, like shiny bald. And so I had a good dozen or so wasp stings on my bald head. Now, we were quite a ways from base camp, where there was a nurse's station. We were about 2 miles at the shortest. Now, we could go back around and do about 6 or 7 miles to go the long way, which would take us through what was considered the boys' side of the property. Because, this site dealt with girls and boys, but they were divided. One side of the property was for boys, one side was for girls. And for the much shorter route, we would have had to march right through the girls' side, which is a big no-no. But it's a big no-no as a general rule. This was a serious moment, and nobody knew right offhand if the kids had allergies. We knew some of their food allergies, but a lot of kids these are from the city. They've never been stung by anything. They don't know if they're allergic. So even though we knew their medical records, because of the unknowns that we could not know, I was like, no, we're going right through girls' camp. These guys are too freaked out to make a big deal out of it. They're not going to be, hooting and hollering, being dickheads. We just need to get them to the nurse's station. And at the time, I really kind of ignored my shit, but really should not have. But my other leader, Jimmy, he was like, no, we need to go back 6 miles, go back through the boys' side. I don't want to break the rules. Well, I told him, we're going, you do what you got to do. These kids need to get seen, because who knows, some of them are so freaked out, they're having panic attacks, but I don't know if it's a panic attack or an allergic reaction. So we're going to the nurse's station. And that's what we did. I got those guys to basically jog 2 miles covered in wasp stings in about, oh God, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes at the most. And that doesn't sound like a very short amount of time, but when you're carrying packs and you're in very uneven terrain, we did pretty good. We got there, the nurse was aghast that the kids had all these stings, and about 2 hours later, Jimmy comes in, and he's like, oh, I went through the right way, so, if we're going to get yelled at, I expect that you're going to tell them that I didn't do it. I'm like, fine, whatever. And nobody cared. They're like, yeah, that was, not the ideal route, but this is not an ideal situation. And had you gone the long route and something happened, we would have been furious, we would have been sued, you would have been fired. Sometimes you have to make ripples. Sometimes you have to make calls that aren't the norm. And it's ironic that Jimmy was the one who wanted to follow the rules, because his daddy, who at the time I knew he worked in government, I think the State Department or something, was Mr. Government, so that made sense that he would follow the rules. But what's ironic is that years later, maybe the early 2010s, I think, two American hikers got arrested and detained in Iran. Now, they claim that they didn't know where the border was and they were just out exploring and all that shit. Well, one of those hikers was Jimmy. Again, not his real name. And this fucker tries to play like, oh, I didn't know, the rules are the rules, sure, but we weren't paying attention, like, blah, blah, blah. Well, you got GPS, you got maps. If rules are rules, as you always said, then I don't want to hear it. And, he got out safe from Iran. Everything was fine in the long run, but I was just thinking about that today, about how sometimes you've got to really say screw it to the policies and do what you got to do for your safety, for everyone else's safety. And a lot of the people who will try to tell you otherwise will pretty much do whatever the hell they need to when it comes down to them. So even the most zealous rule follower will suddenly become a hypocrite when his own personal self-interest is at stake. So just something to think about when you feel hesitant to rock the boat, because someone else will. And it might not always rock in the direction it needs to. So I'm finishing my hike. I think I've got some shin splints that I need to deal with and not make it worse. So this will probably be my best video for the next couple of days. I don't know. We'll see how long I have the pain. But hope you enjoy your day, and hope you don't have any shin splints, because they suck. And my ride's not here, so I get to have candy and sit down. Talk to you later.